Well, hello again. Those little dots and dashes you heard are the Morse code identifiers for VORs along the route of flight. Actually, we used a GPS, as most people do these days, and looking at an iPad screen of a road map that we for our flight plan that we our route of flight that we used for our flight down to Lakeland, Florida. A quick look at the luggage area of the Highlander. Has had two backpacks for a 4-day trip. Had plenty of room for a lot more, but didn't need it. And here we're motoring southbound towards Vidalia, Georgia for a fuel stop. Switched over to a VFR tactical or VFR sectional chart to show people that not familiar with aviation how we navigate on these little maps, showing towers, rivers, highways, railroads, and things like that if we don't have GPS. Nice to kind of follow the flight along as we're flying along, and the iPad and the application for this makes it real convenient. All right, I was quiet there while we cranked up, leaving Vidalia after we stopped in for fuel. Had a late start after school and work. We left Thursday afternoon to make it down to St. Simons there on the coast just before nightfall. Right on the coast there, they had some controlled burns going on with the fire over there. You can see the instrument panel looking, has a great display and a nice smooth flight down after the sun went down. When we left Clemson, it was a few rain showers in the area and kind of bumpy. Spent the night down there on the coast, waited for a few hours for the fog to burn off, and then when our last day of flying down to Lakeland, our main objective was just to get down to the airport before it closed at 12:30 for the air show. So we're out of flight. We bypassed Jacksonville, went by Gainesville, Florida, straight south by Ocala. That was one of our stops coming back home. And right down between Tampa and Lakeland, we'll fly right down there and fly over a little airport that had a control tower operating for overflow traffic. That was called Plant City. So we talked to them, flew over that about 1,000 feet. Once we got past the airport, we dropped down to 500 feet. Excuse me, and hung a left-hand turn, followed a little highway or a power line, and flew in north at 500 feet and landed at Lakeland. I completely forgot about the camera while we were flying on this leg. A long day, and was looking out for traffic and things like that. So sorry for not getting the arrival on the camera. Back to the iPad function. This will show people this. You're probably familiar with it. You can overlay radar, and here I'll do lightning strikes. I made this last night, so there's a little thunderstorm over the area. You can see a little electrical symbol indicating a lightning strike up by where we live. All right, so we like the iPad function. It's a nice tool to have in the aircraft, and you can use it in flight, which is wonderful. All right, that's the day we landed. We tied it down. We had the option of camping there. We chose to go to a hotel, but you can see our neighbors there were camping out. And I'll just take you through a quick walk around through the grounds. I had a couple of days of walking around. We met up with friends there and other people that we haven't seen, but we've or haven't met yet, but we've met over the internet. There's a T51, a P51 light sport model, modeled after the P51. A lot of these models of these airplanes I'm not too familiar with. They're all light sport. This is the light sport area where we parked. And come up now to another area of the airfield where people will park, and these are for the vintage aircraft or the antique aircraft. And that's where different areas had different people, different airplanes categories for where they parked. A little Waco there, red and white airplane, always catches your eye. I always find it interesting. It's always true that whatever is old is new again. And here's an old Aranca C3 airplane built in 1932 or so. It looks just like, or I think it might be a C2. Anyway, C2 or C3, a two-cylinder Continental engine on this aircraft. Very rare and good to see it out there. A lot of volunteers that were helping out during the air show. people, obviously a lot of people walking around with airplanes and propellers running. I'll be quiet here for a second. There you go. I like hearing the engines go by. But anyway, the volunteers would be like traffic stop signals, making sure no one would dart out in front of an airplane while it's taxiing by and let the guys go. Beautiful Lockheed Electra airplane here in fantastic shape. Seeing my reflection there in the aluminum. And it's a nice, it's a treat and a privilege to walk around all these airplanes that people spend a lot of time, a lot of money in restoring and keeping flying. And we really appreciate the fact that we can just go right up to it. We were asked not to touch it. You could see a few signs on the airplane. You can look all you want, but please don't touch. And we honor that. It's great to walk underneath the C-47. That's like a DC-3 civilian, but walk underneath there and just smell the oil and the fuel and the rubber and all of the old airplane smells. Also, you can tell us, on the ground, you can see the oil droppings of the radial engine, which is a normal sign for those old engines. Once again, just kind of zooming up around the fuselage, so people who aren't able to get out to the airfield can have a look and see what the airplanes, the size, the grandeur, and just the overall feeling of walking around a big, back then anyway, a big airplane. They're relatively small now compared to the airplanes today, but still it's a wonderful thing. Included a few still photos from my iPhone here. This airplane, you can read, was used in the Berlin airlift. Like I said, when we met down there, about 3 or 4 airplanes from our airport flew down at different times, so we met up and saw each other down there. And also we met some friends from either out in Idaho or Colorado who made the journey as well down to Son of Fun. It was nice to meet up with them and renew acquaintances. Here's another example of a pit spy plane. I think you saw maybe the sign on the propeller, and this airplane was being judged or had been judged. So you can see the attention to detail that these people put into their show quality airplanes. Again, a red and white design that always catches your eye. And that's tube and fabric, chromalloy tube with fabric covering, a few metal panels around there, but very, very, very pretty airplane. And this particular one has a Russian radial. And come up on another traffic area. I'll be quiet here for a second. All right, so we were allowed to cross that little road. Now we're coming into the general aviation or the manufacturing section of the display area. A Quest aircraft Kodiak. These are airplanes like the Cessnas, the Pipers, the Beechcraft, so that were on display there. And being in Florida, I figured there would be a big presence of amphibious or float planes in the area there. So I was like looking at those. They look a lot different out of the water. Sitting up on land, they're very tall. And a pretty cockpit display of this Kodiak or this Quest aircraft. And back to a Piper. This is a Piper Seminole used for twin engine training. Always good to see that little airplane around. And another twin engine aircraft is called an air cam for camera observation type flying or just for fun flying. You really sit out in the breeze in that thing. You can see there. I had held the camera up over my head to look in there. And even for a light aircraft here, you can see the attention to detail on this red one here of all the stitching and the fabric, the work that went into here. It looks very, very pretty. Also, besides the aircraft on display, there's a lot of booths in the area that tools, aircraft parts, electrical, electronics, headsets, you name it, and the people were on display there. So we stopped in and bought a few things that we thought we might need. And once again, Piper Cub. And this particular one coming up is a light sport cub on floats. And another beautiful example of what is out there. And I think I'm coming up here on the end of the video here, a Maule aircraft built in Moultrie, Georgia, a few hundred miles away from where we live right now, but in the same state, or in the state of Georgia. This is a 4-seat aircraft. It's been in production. I think the company's been around since 1960 or so. And talked with the owners there, and they're very pleasant to chat with. And then I did remember to turn on the camera before we left. So cranking up, leaving Sun and Fun, and said hello and goodbye to all the people that helped us out there. And leaving southbound for the departure to avoid all the air traffic leaving Lakeland. And as I mentioned, we had a fuel stop or an overnight stop in Ocala that night, and then made it home the next day in one day after about 2 or 3 legs of flying. And that's it. Hope you enjoy.